Have you ever heard about the country with 1 million active landmines? Well, if you haven't, then you're about to learn about what is a real horror in a country that is just trying to survive. Welcome to the dark side of Cambodia. Now, if you think the Kingdom of Cambodia is only famous for its superb culture and stunning natural beauty, then you're about to witness one of the greatest twists of all time. From the horrors of war to subtle events like human trafficking, get ready to discover a side of Cambodia that you have never seen before. And you definitely would want to stick around until the end to discover why there are almost no old people in this country. Ready? Let's dive right in. Number 6. The Dark History. When it comes to the dark side of Cambodia, one aspect that often stands out the most is its dark history, which has seen the country go through lots of rather unforgettable events. After all, much of the negative attention the country gets today is in one way or another connected to the dark events of the past. You know how the history of almost every country is usually dotted with moments of ups and downs, right? Well, let's just say it's been mostly downs for Cambodia, especially in the past century. From foreign invasion to war turmoil and French colonization, the country has really endured a lot. But then, in all of these, the darkest period in Cambodia's history came from within, during the radical communist movement of the Khmer Rouge. This guerrilla group took power in 1975 after a bloody guerrilla war, and ruled the country for a little under 45 months. However, the atrocious and barbaric acts of the group led to what is today still referred to as one of the most inhumane events in world history. During this period, millions of people lost their lives to brutal massacres, starvation, forced labor, torture, and many other forms of violence carried out by the group in what was known as the Cambodian Genocide. The Khmer Rouge, led by Marxist dictator Pol Pot, even set up killing fields for extrajudicial executions, and reports have it that about 2 million Cambodians were massacred in the fields. At the peak of the ruthless horror, the group even used healthy humans as lab rats for medical purposes and forced more people into partial slavery. This is no doubt the undisputed darkest part of Cambodian history, and the fact that scholars were mostly the target of these horrors has significantly slowed down the country's development till today. Number 5. Surrogacy Scandals. At the turn of the 21st century, Asia was known for their booming surrogacy industry that offered a much cheaper alternative for foreigners seeking to explore the option of surrogacy. Back then, countries like Nepal and Thailand were notorious for this service that initially seemed harmless. However, these countries have since outlawed the service for reasons that include exploitation and poor conditions for surrogates. But then, while many Asian countries have dumped the idea of international surrogacy, a few others have witnessed a rise in this seemingly controversial tradition, and Cambodia is one of them. As a matter of fact, Cambodia now ranks as one of the top countries for international surrogacy in the continent, with dozens of clinics built to accommodate this service in the past 2 decades. However, like in Thailand and Nepal, the whole surrogacy scandal led the government of Cambodia to finally place a ban on international surrogacy. But then, more than a few organizations still carry on this practice in the shadows, and many foreign couples still explore the option for its low costs. International surrogacy in Cambodia costs between $40 to $60, which is pretty low compared to the flat rates in other countries. To tackle the still rising cases of international surrogacy in the country, the government is now slapping women who accept to be surrogates with charges of child trafficking and sentencing them to almost 20 years in prison. Number 4. The Beer Girls. Now, a more popular practice that contributes to what is a pretty dark side of Cambodia is the presence of beer girls in clubs and bars. If you've been to the country recently, then you must have noticed the presence of young and pretty ladies promoting beer brands in clubs and other nighttime establishments. Of course, this is a legal hustle that is very much used for product promotion in many countries. But then, what you may not know is that there's a dark side of this practice, especially in Cambodia. You see, to the uninformed observer, these girls are only employed to tell customers in nightclubs, karaoke bars, and other establishments about a specific beer brand as a marketing gimmick. After all, pretty ladies are used for selling other products too, and it's purely legal. But then, what you often won't know is that these girls drink an average of almost 2 liters of beer each night as part of the job. Insane, right? Now, as if that's not enough, these girls often don't get paid well, and they're also subjected to poor working conditions that leave them vulnerable to abuse and harassment. Add that to the damage the beer does to their livers, and you'll see why this is considered one of the darkest parts to modern-day Cambodia. Number 3. Child labor. Another aspect that has attracted negative attention to Cambodia and put it in the spotlight for the wrong reason is the inexcusable rise in child labor. You know how childhood is supposed to be all dreamy and innocent, right? Well, that's hardly ever the case in Cambodia, as kids are often faced with different, mostly inhumane conditions from a very young age. In this case, children are forced to go into hard labor by their parents as a way to make more money or pay off debts from loan sharks. Unfortunately, this has always been an issue in the country, and it's largely because of the slightly high poverty rate suffered by many of the country's population. However, recent decades saw a rather awful rise to this barbaric culture, and reports even have it that the country still has over 100,000 children below the age of 15 involved in mostly forced child labor. Oh, and that's not all. You see, despite being far from professionals, these children are made to work in local production factories and construction sites where they have to endure poor working conditions. As a result, many of them suffer severe injuries daily, while others are left with far worse fates. Of course, the government is making efforts to put an end to this unfortunate situation by closing down offending companies and punishing parents who send their child into forced labor. But then, this culture has become so widespread, and it will definitely take some undoing to fully eliminate child labor in these parts. Number 2. The population distribution. The population distribution in Cambodia is one that is rather unique and maybe even slightly appalling if you think about it. You see, more than a third of the country's population is under the age of 50, and the larger part of them are 25 or below. Indeed, there's no denying that this distribution is one that can benefit the economy a great deal with an active workforce. But then, the story behind the statistic is one that leaves little to be desired. Remember the Khmer Rouge genocide of the 1970s? Well, it turns out that the dark hole it made in Cambodia's history left lasting effects that make aging a pretty rare luxury in these parts. This is largely because many adults were killed in the dark years, while others had to endure poor conditions that ultimately reduced their lifespan. So, while the country may be filled with young and vibrant people today, this dark history makes it more of a horror story that brings back traumatic memories. Number 1. The Active Landmines. Did you know that Cambodia is one of the countries with the most amputees today? Yes, and to make matters worse, the country still records many more new cases each year because of the number of active landmines buried around the country. You see, the effects of the Khmer Rouge's reign and the US invasion many years earlier have left the country in a sorry state, where millions of landmines are just sitting underground waiting to explode. According to reports, there are still over 4 million landmines and other pieces of explosives buried around the country, and this statistic has seen Cambodia rank as the most landmine-affected country. You can imagine having to watch your every step to avoid getting ripped apart by an explosive that was buried over 100 years ago. Crazy, right? Plus, the worst part is that residents have almost no way of knowing where these landmines are buried until they're unfortunate enough to step on one. Now, that's the situation in most rural areas of Cambodia, and you'll agree that this is indeed a dark side for any country. The good news, however, is that the government, with the aid of other local and foreign agencies, is putting in lots of effort to safely find and remove these landmines. Sadly though, it goes without saying that it will take a lot of time and effort to rid the country of the millions of literally ticking bombs waiting to explode. So, there you have it folks, the dark side of Cambodia unveiled. Don't forget to subscribe and check out our channel for more exciting facts about your favorite travel destinations. See you in the next video.